Have you ever thought about the way some things just seem to go better together? Like peanut butter and chocolate, or milk and Oreos, or Batman and Robin, or movie theaters and popcorn, or the Jonas Brothers? I mean, you see what I mean? All those things just are better together, and separating them just doesn't seem right? Now, to me, those are two pretty powerful words, together and separate. And they're actually two words that we're gonna be talking about today. No, we're not gonna spend the next hour debating the pros and cons of a chocolate and peanut butter combo, because there are no cons for a peanut butter and chocolate combo. We're actually gonna talk about those two words, together and separate, in relationship to your family. We're gonna talk about them in relationship to divorce. Now, some of you probably experienced a lot of feelings when I said the word divorce, and that's understandable. It can be a really uncomfortable and even sad thing to talk about. But it's so important that we have this conversation, because the truth is, divorce impacts a lot of us. I know that firsthand because my parents are divorced too. For some of you, your parents are still together and they seem to get along pretty well, and that's awesome. But some of you might have parents going through a divorce right now, or you have parents who fight so much you just wonder if the house would be more peaceful if they weren't together. Or maybe your parents got divorced a long time ago and you barely even remember a time when they were married. Or maybe you've always been raised by a single parent or a caregiver, so your family dynamic has always felt the way that it does right now. And while some of you haven't experienced divorce firsthand, your friends have parents who have gone through it or are currently going through it. And no matter what your situation is or how your life has or hasn't been changed by divorce, family stuff can be really tricky to deal with. And that's why we're gonna talk about it today. If you've ever looked at your parents or your friends' parents divorcing and felt a sense of, that's not really how this is supposed to be, allow me to clear something up. You're right. Divorce isn't God's design for how marriage is supposed to work. It feels off or broken or not quite how it's supposed to be, and that's because it is. But that isn't just true for divorce. There are lots of things in our world that have been affected by brokenness, and there are a lot of things that are different than God's original design. And here's an important thing to remember in all of this. Divorce doesn't make your parents bad people, and it doesn't make God love them any less. So no matter what your family looks like, don't get nervous about where this talk is going. This isn't about your parents and the decisions that they've made. This talk is about you and the impact that divorce has had on you. It's also about what to do when your family experiences something painful, whatever that may be. Because here's the truth. Every family experiences brokenness in some way, shape, or form. And sometimes that's divorce. And other times, it's something else. Unfortunately, as a middle schooler, you have no control over it. So while the topic of our conversation today is divorce, we're talking about you and not your parents. And if your parents are still together, what we're talking about can still relate to how you navigate hard changes in your family. If you're one of the students in the room whose parents are divorced or who are in the process of getting a divorce, then you don't need me to tell you how tricky that situation can be. You don't need me to tell you that you feel like it's a big deal. You know it because you're living it. It's impacting your life in a lot of ways already. And maybe you feel like you're in the middle of your parents. I know that feeling. I mean, you're pressured to choose a side, to decide who's right and who's wrong, and it's so hard because at the end of the day, they're still both your parents and you don't want to have to be the one to choose. Or maybe it's hard because you're seeing your parents in a different light. You're hearing about behaviors and choices that led to their separation, and you're seeing them act in ways you never imagined that they would. You're listening to them talk negatively about each other, and it's really difficult to see your parents that way, isn't it? Maybe for you, divorce means more responsibility. Now that one of your parents is no longer living at home, you feel like you have to take on more to help your family. Somebody has to take care of your siblings and do the chores or even support a parent emotionally when they're struggling. And that's a lot of responsibility for a middle schooler's shoulders. Or maybe divorce or conflict in your home has changed the relationships in your family. Now you might have a stronger relationship with one parent and not so much one with the other. I mean, sure, you used to be really close to your dad, but then he moved out of state after the divorce and now it's just not the same. Or you spend less time with your mom now, not because she moved, but because you don't know how to talk to her after learning about the reasons behind your parents' divorce. Or maybe one of your parents just left and never looked back. And that definitely changes your relationship, doesn't it? If you're sitting here at this point thinking, that all sounds really difficult to deal with, but my parents aren't divorced, I can't really relate. Well, according to statistics, around half the people in this room may be impacted by divorce at some point in their lives. And that means that chances are pretty good that you know someone or you have a close friend who's already experiencing the impact of divorce. Hearing this now will help you be a good friend to them in that process, and that is so important. Because when you're in the middle of divorce, something that completely changes your family, you feel all kinds of things. Sad and angry and frustrated, relieved, out of control, hopeless, scared, worried, confused, just to name a few. So what do we do? If something like divorce impacts so many of us, how do we get through all those feelings? And how do we support a friend in the middle of it? How do we handle something like divorce in a real and healthy way? If you're experiencing the real and messy parts of divorce in your family right now, I want you to hear this. God is with you. And even when your family changes, God doesn't. And some days, remembering that might be the only thing that helps you keep going in the middle of such a difficult time. There's a passage of scripture that I like from the book of Psalms that I think will help you see what I mean. This particular passage was written as a song or a poem that talks about what it means to look to God for help in the midst of difficult times. Let's take a look. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth give way, and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging. While this poet wasn't talking specifically about divorce, I think we can still pull the same truth from this passage. Even when your family changes, God doesn't. While things around you may be messy or falling apart, God is ever present and unchanging. Let's see if we can picture what the writer is describing here. He says the earth gives way. Now maybe divorce has made you feel like the ground is literally falling apart underneath you and like nothing is steady. He says the mountains fall into the sea, and maybe nothing makes sense and everything that felt solid and safe doesn't anymore. He says the waters roar and foam, and maybe the chaos and the noise and the arguing at your house has felt constant. Now, in the middle of all that, the psalmist says 4 key words: we will not fear. In other words, we will not let this outside situation affect our inside sense of calm. And even if things feel crazy around us, it doesn't have to make things crazy in us. Remember the beginning of that verse. God is ever present. God is always with us, especially in times of trouble. His strength and presence are things that we can count on and things that will get us through difficult times. God never changes. Now, I know divorce or family conflict can really shake up your life. And it can feel a lot like what the psalmist talked about here. Earth-shattering, mountains crumbling, waters roaring type of stuff. When your family life feels that way, remember this truth. Even when your family changes, God doesn't. For some of you, your families are changing because you're right in the middle of a divorce, or you're grieving how divorce has changed your family. And for others, maybe your parents have been divorced for a while now, but you're just trying to navigate your family situation because it feels new or different or even difficult. If that's you, then take a look at some words of wisdom from Paul, one of the leaders of the early church. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Now, what does this mean for us? Well, there are certain things about our families that we just can't control. We don't get to choose if our parents stay together. We can't decide how much fighting is too much fighting. We can't control the choices our parents make that impact our lives, but we can control how we respond. And in this simple verse, Paul gives us a foundation for how we can react and respond in any difficult situation. We can have hope. Hope that it'll get better and that it won't always feel like this. Hope that things will turn out okay because God is with us and He never changes. And that hope can give us joy, even in the midst of really challenging circumstances. He says we can be patient. Patient when the people we love disappoint us. patient with ourselves when things get really hard to handle, and patient with our friends who are dealing with a lot at home. And we can keep praying. God is with us in all of our difficult circumstances, so that means that He hears our prayers. God might not answer our prayers in the way that we might expect or even want, but He hears us. So when things are difficult at home, we can stay faithful by praying for our family, our parents, ourselves, or even our friends who are facing hard times. Because even when your family changes, God doesn't. And when we face difficult changes in our family caused by divorce, we can rest in the truth that God never changes. He's our ever-present, constant support and refuge. And if your parents are going through a divorce right now, or they've already divorced, I want you to remember a few things. Number one, God is with you, and He doesn't change. He's your comforter and strength in the middle of all this. So pray that God would show you that. Or ask a friend or a small group leader to help you remember that truth. Focus on what you can do to keep His presence in your mind and heart during this difficult time at home. Number two, choose to respect and love your parents. That's easier said than done, right? When your family seems to be falling apart, the last thing you want to do is love them first. The last thing you think they might deserve is your respect. But you can be upset and still choose to love and respect someone. Divorce isn't easy on anybody, and chances are there are parts of the story that you don't know. So instead of ghosting your parents or taking sides or slamming doors or responding in anger, you can choose to respect and love them. Number three, control what you can control. Remember that the happiness of your family is not up to you. I still have to remind myself about this now, and my parents have been divorced for a really long time. Whether your parents stay together or get divorced isn't up to you. Whatever happens in their relationship is not your fault, and you can't control it. The only thing you control is the way that you respond to the situation. Number four, it's okay to feel a lot of things. Experiencing your parents go through a divorce can make you feel so many different emotions. You might be sad or relieved or scared or worried or a number of other things. Everything that you feel is okay and normal, so don't be afraid to feel big things. Number five, talk to a trusted adult. Sometimes it's really hard to process divorce and everything that goes along with it. You may need to talk to a trusted adult like a small group leader or a school counselor to figure out how to navigate this crazy time in your life. They love you, they want to support you, and they want to know if you're having a hard time, so don't be shy about reaching out to them if you want to talk. And if you have a friend whose parents are divorced or who are currently going through a divorce, there are some things that you can do to support them too. Number one, listen. Just let your friend talk about and process everything that their family is going through. Sometimes all they need is someone who will support them and just listen to them through this difficult time. Number two, let them know you're there. Even if your friend hasn't opened up to you about their parents' divorce, simply acknowledge what they're going through and let them know that you support them and that you're here if they need you. Don't force them to confide in you, but be available if they decide to share. Number three, invite them to hang out. When your friend is experiencing a divorce in their family, it may not be peaceful or happy at home. So inviting them to hang out at your house or go to a movie or skateboard at the park can help them to get out of that environment and do something fun. It could be a welcome distraction from the divorce. Number four, encourage them to go to God. Remind your friend that God is always with them. He's their strength and support through anything life hands them. So offer to pray for them and with them during this time, because even when your family changes, God doesn't. Navigating something like divorce isn't easy, but when our family changes, we can rest in the truth that God never does. He is with us, and He loves us, and He wants to help us get through this challenging time. So as you leave today, think about this question. What's one thing I can do to help myself or a friend deal with divorce?